Did Gregg Williams save the Cleveland Browns from making one of the biggest draft blunders in NFL history? Well, we're going to unpack what he shared on a podcast on today's episode, and then we'll get into a fun hypothetical of what would have happened if the Browns did take Mitch Trubisky first overall in 2017 over Myles Garrett, and they didn't listen to Gregg Williams. But here's what Gregg Williams said on a recent podcast. Up until 2 hours before the draft, we were still in arguments in the draft room about whether it's Myles or Mitch Trubisky. They are looking like they are going to settle on Mitch Trubisky. And so right at the 2-hour mark, I said, fellas, I understand that we talked this whole thing through. I just want to let everybody in here know I have a press conference after this, and we'll let them know about the conversations going on here about not taking Myles Garrett. I have so many thoughts to this. Let me try to organize them for you all. First off, God bless Gregg Williams. Did not think I'd wake up today and say that, but had Gregg Williams, again, this is his word, not quite sure if this is 100% truth or a little bit of the truth, and we need the other side of the story, but if we're just taking Gregg Williams' word here, God bless Gregg Williams for avoiding an ultimate blunder and disaster for the Browns, passing on an absolute generational defensive end of Myles Garrett, who is already the team's greatest player in franchise history, arguably. Like after Jim Brown and Bernie Kosar, he's top 3, and he's only been in the NFL for 7 years. So yeah, thank you, Gregg Williams, for making sure the Browns avoided an absolute blunder of a mistake in passing on Myles Garrett. But can we talk about how Hugh Jackson and Ken Dorsey let the defensive coordinator peer pressure them into making the first overall pick? I mean, this literally sounds like something out of the movie Draft Day, which the fun thing about Draft Day is we can laugh at it and go, that's ridiculous. That's not how it works. No one has the first overall pick of the draft and doesn't know what they're doing on Draft Day. It sounds like the Browns, up until 2 hours before the draft, were still debating. What an unprofessional and disorganized NFL front office. You know you have the first overall pick for months, and you don't know by 6 p.m. Eastern time on draft day what you're doing in round 1, first overall, and your defensive coordinator is going to strong arm the head coach and the GM into making the pick his way? Like, could you imagine if Mitch Trubisky did have an amazing NFL career and the Browns passed on him because their DC said, I'm going to tell everyone. Which, by the way, since when did defensive coordinators have press conferences after the draft? Maybe I just forgot all about that 6-7 years ago, but no, that's a little bit strange, don't you think? And it just goes to show what a horrible leader Hugh Jackson was. I mean, no wonder that when he got fired, he was replaced by the guy that was basically banging his wife. Like Gregg Williams, not actually, but you know the point I'm trying to make here. Gregg Williams here is like, yep, I'm going to call the shots, and I'm not even the head coach. Just so embarrassing if all this is truly true, word for word, and 2 hours before the draft, the Browns are having, second thoughts and going back and forth on who they should take first overall. Just incompetent. So, what if they did pick Mitch? Let's explore this idea for a moment. Again, this is one big hypothetical, and I made a lot of leaps, and I made a lot of decisions on what I think this team would have done in this scenario. There's a great NFL, like YouTube, I think it might be, it's called like the NFL, on what would have happened if all this stuff happened. I don't know who runs it, but I used to watch it all the time. A lot of fun. So what if the Browns took Mitch Trubisky? Well, if they took Mitch Trubisky first overall in 2017, they very, very likely do not take Deshaun Kaiser in round 2 of 2017, who of course started almost all of the games for the Browns that fateful 2017 season. Mitch Trubisky started 12 games for the Bears in his rookie year, taking over from Mike Glennon a third of the way through. He went 4-8 as a starter. Now, the stats are not necessarily super fair to compare since Kaiser played way more football than Mitch did, but we can all agree Mitch Trubisky had a better season and overall better career than DeShone Kizer did. So let's say Mitch was the Browns quarterback in 2017. Homecoming from Northeast Ohio. Everyone would have been kind of fun and jazzed about that idea, possibly. So if the Browns had Mitch Trubisky in 2017, what if they don't go that awful, we don't need to say out loud, 0 for season? What if, for example, the Browns won 3 or 4 games that year with Mitch Trubisky? And all of a sudden, a team like the New York Giants, who picked second overall in 2018, have the first overall pick because the Browns won 4 games with Mitch Trubisky. So Cleveland has picks 2 and picks 4, thanks to the previous Texans trade. All right. So let's go down this rabbit hole for a moment. Stick with me. I'm going to land this plane, I promise. If you go back in time, Browns took Baker Mayfield first overall. The Giants, if you remember, their GM at the time was a guy named Dave Gettleman. He was infatuated with Saquon Barkley. He loved Saquon Barkley. Now, would he have loved him so much he would take a running back first overall? That I'm not so sure about, all right? But if it went Giants first overall and the Browns had 3 or 4 wins and they had the second overall pick and Mitch Trubisky maybe showed enough to believe we don't need to draft a quarterback in 2018, it would have been interesting what the Browns core could have looked like. And I'll share with you in just a moment. But if you want to get a Jerry Jeudy jersey, get one today. I've got the link below, chatsports.com/Jeudy jersey. I guarantee that you're going to be one of one in the Muni lot with a brand new Cleveland Browns offensive playmaker. So go get your jersey today. I put that link in the comments and description of today's video. So let's say the Giants had the first overall pick and they went quarterback, Baker Mayfield, to take over from Eli Manning. Or maybe they traded the pick because they still liked Eli because when they were picking at 2 in 2018, unless they were Baker or bust, they still passed on a lot of quarterbacks. So maybe they traded the first overall pick to, I don't know, say the Denver Broncos. And they moved up because John Elway really wanted to get a tall white quarterback. And there were a lot of those in that draft class. Well, maybe the Browns at 2 go Saquon Barkley. That's a possibility. Maybe since they didn't take Myles Garrett the year before, they feel the need to go edge rusher in 2018's draft. So they go with Bradley Chubb, who of course went to Denver at 5. But in this mock, hypothetical rabbit hole scenario, maybe the Broncos are a team that trades from 5-1 with the New York Giants, and the Giants get a bunch of draft picks. They still believe Eli can play for them at a high level, and the Denver Broncos go pick Sam Darnold. I think the Broncos really like Sam Darnold a lot in that draft class. So if the Browns took either Barkley or Chubb, but let's say Barkley because if you remember back in 2018, you got to remember what the buzz was at the time and tune out what we know now. Saquon Barkley was a generational talent coming out of Penn State, right? Everyone thought he was the biggest can't-miss running back prospect we had seen, probably since Adrian Peterson. It was tough to talk a team out of passing from Saquon Barkley. There were people talking about the Browns going Barkley first overall. So in this scenario, if they've got Mitch at quarterback from the previous year, let's say they go Barkley second overall because he was viewed as that highly touted of a prospect. Well, if they do that, then they're probably not going Nick Chubb in round 2. So my guess is they would go with a pass rusher because they didn't take one the year prior. And the next time they were on the clock after picking Nick Chubb, they went with that defensive end out of Miami. So what if they went with Harold Landry instead, who went a few picks after Nick Chubb to the Tennessee Titans? He would have been like maybe the next guy, the highest guy on their board at outside linebacker, edge rusher, if you will. So instead of the Browns 2017 to 2018 top draft picks looking like this, Myles Garrett, I think Jabrill Peppers, that 2017 later first rounder, could have stayed the same whether they went Garrett or Trubisky. Baker Mayfield first overall in 2018, followed by, I think Denzel Ward would stay the same, and then Nick Chubb in round 2. What if it looked like this? Mitch Trubisky first overall in 2017, then Saquon Barkley second overall in 2018, and Harold Landry is the pick for the Browns in round number 2 instead of Nick Chubb because you would have just drafted Saquon Barkley. I'm very, very happy that it's not the what if. Can we go back to, really quickly, Colin, what the Browns' actual draft picks were. Sure, not all of them materialized into being Cleveland Browns legends, but I mean, Myles Garrett, Denzel Ward, Nick Chubb sure did. You went 3 for 5, and that's not the worst batting average for first and second round draft picks. And by the way, you went 3 for 5, and they're not even just like good players. Myles Garrett, Hall of Famer. Denzel Ward, Nick Chubb, perennial Pro Bowl players at their worst. Like, you kicked and nailed those picks. Whereas, had you gone the what if route, the only really, like, Denzel Ward would have been the same. I like Harold Landry, but he's not a Hall of Famer like Myles Garrett. I like Barkley, but I mean, I'd rather have. I mean, would anyone pick Saquon Barkley's career over Nick Chubb's career so far? No. And that's large part because of injuries, and that stinks, but that has to be factored into the equation. So you downgrade at running back, you downgrade at outside linebacker, edge rusher, defensive end, and you got the same cornerback, and, well, Jabrill Peppers is still traded for OBJ, and Mitch Trubisky is your quarterback for maybe 2 years, and then in 2019, you go Kyler Murray. Oh boy, now we're really. Would you have been the worst team 3? Like, that I don't want to think about that actually. What if it was Josh Rosen? Oh, that was 2018. Anywho, so let's wrap up the video with this. Give me your prayers emoji in the comment section below to thank Gregg Williams one last time. He hopped on, I would say, the podcast name earlier. I want to give them credit. Which podcast was it? Oh, I can't find it now. Okay. Well, that's not great work by me. I had it written down. All right. Well, I'm just making this an absolute disaster. But shout out to Gregg Williams for making sure the Browns took Myles Garrett instead of Mitch Trubisky. All right. Let's pick a card here. Colin, which card do you want to go with? Okay. Oh, come get some. That's the podcast.
I was about to say.
Come get some. I'm sorry. Come get some, guys.
Come get some. Also, by the way, the NFL was made by a guy named Dave Damashek.
Oh, you big fan of it?
Oh, yeah.
I didn't know that.
I used to watch those. His what if Russell Wilson wasn't a Seahawk video is like my worst nightmare. So, like, you know, did a little bit of research on it. But anyways, yeah, crazy scenario you pointed out, but a very realistic one based on how you like laid it out. So, since we talked about all those players, I'm going to go today 4 of diamonds.
4 of diamonds? Give me the 9 of spades. 95, Myles Garrett, 9 of spades.
Makes sense.
King of spades. King of spades. Okay, that will do it for us on today's show. Appreciate you hanging out with us here. Hope we didn't bore you too much with that hypothetical, and I'll see you all later.